Hello, today is September the 28th, 1985. My name is J.R. and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to invite you to listen to an opening meeting with Alcoholics Anonymous at the Shenandoah Roundup in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I thank you and I hope you enjoy this tape.
I'm Ralph and I'm an alcoholic. Now, I've got to make sure that I read this. I've had so many instructions as to how this should be done, I sure as hell don't want to do it wrong. It really is nice to have all this fun and everybody sober, isn't it? Those of you that care will go on Lord's serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. I already told you that I am Ralph and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to everybody. Visitors, and if there's anybody from the press here, maybe the new TV station from Woodstock, it does beam out for a mile and a half. Please don't use our names. Our faces, yes, but not our names. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Let's see now. These were the instructions, but I don't read so well. I remember this guy. Flannel mouth, no. Dirty Don. Don B. from Roanoke. Will you come up, please, and read how it works?
My name is Don Berglund, and I'm an alcoholic. Just a few brief announcements. Like everybody else, they get up here, they just can't help it. I was talking to a fellow at lunch, and we were talking about predestination, and he said, I think you won 2 books this morning in that raffle. And I said, yeah, we got 2 of them. And so to the young lady in the yellow coat, I hope everything's okay, because he said I really needed them if I won 2. Secondly, it really is fun for Sandy and I to come here. And 4 years ago, Sandy had got a ride with me to come up to Massanetta to another AA get-together. And she needed a ride because I guess she won't mind if I tell you, yes, the state of Virginia had gotten her license for a year or so, and she wasn't driving, so she needed a ride. And that was June the 5th of 1981, and on June the 5th of 1982, we were married. So God bless the state of Virginia and Massanetta. How it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what it used to be like, what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there's one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except wouldn't to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. That we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, that God could and would if he were sought. Thank you.
You know, we sometimes don't realize that we are in the midst of history. Looking at this sign here, the first international I was at was in 1955. 6,000 of us in St. Louis. Bill Wilson. Many of you have read Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. I met the Jesuit priest, Father Dowling, and Reverend Shoemaker, and I didn't realize that I was listening and watching history. We have really been given a gift. Now we're going to hear from a Massachusetts gentleman, Bill G., 12 Traditions.
Hi, my name is Bill Gummel. I'm an alcoholic. Hi. I would just like to say that we really appreciate your hospitality and the way we were treated down here. We really are enjoying this convention. I don't know how I got up here, but there's a full moon out there. 12 Traditions. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
I was given a big list of what this man has done, bad and good. But the only thing I'm going to say, sometime back in my drinking history, and this says that if I was invited to speak, they would have invited me to speak, and I wasn't, so I'm going to tell one story, because I do believe I have met my speaker once, this tonight's speaker, once before. Some 40 years ago, when I was down and out in Erie, Pennsylvania, I was sitting in a bar in a booth with another fellow, and we were down to about our last 68 cents. In walks a man with a beautiful suit, as our tonight's speaker has. I did call him to sit down with us because I saw that he had green stuff all over. And within an hour, I had sold him a non-existent locomotive off of a non-existent estate that had to be settled. So with that introduction, I give you George.
And I always enjoyed driving that locomotive too, Ralph. Had a little trouble getting it down the Ohio River, but it was all right. My name's George Doherty, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm a grateful alcoholic. I've heard several people say that here, and I've heard several people say that they never thought they'd say that, but they do find themselves saying that, and I do say that. I thought they were crazy when I first heard somebody say, I'm grateful. I'm not only a grateful alcoholic, I am grateful to be an alcoholic, because everything that I am today is because I am an alcoholic and because of you all. And because back in 1935, a fellow took a turn for the church registry and found a man named Reverend Walter Tunks instead of going in to the bar room. And if I can't remember to be grateful for that, you know, the thin thread that has me here at the Shenandoah Valley Roundup, with the troubles I had and all that, what a legacy we have to be grateful for, and I just want to be grateful enough, you know. I did not think when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous that I was ever going to have any fun again as long as I lived. I'm very serious about that. I heard Ernest say last night in the movie so deeply in the Alcothon, he said, have fun, you know, have fun. And he talked about the fact we'd cried enough. And the longest I have been without a meeting since I have been back in Alcoholics Anonymous since April 18, 1979, is about 10 days. And right after I got back in the program, I went on a trip to England and Scotland. And I didn't have the courage then to stand up for the fact that I needed to go to AA meetings. And so I didn't tell the crowd I was with that I needed it. And the time we got to Edinburgh, I was with a bunch of managers, and I was going nuts. And I was going to go to an AA meeting. I didn't care who had offended or who knew about it or what. And so I called, and a nice lady answered the phone. She said, come on over, bring a cab, because you'll never find us. You can walk back, but get a cab. And I went. And I'm telling you, the coffee knocked the bottom out of my stomach. The room was so thick with smoke that it burned my eyes, and it felt good. I was home. And they called on me, They went around the room to talk, and they asked me to say a few words. And, of course, I overcame my normal humility and said a few words. And a beautiful young red-headed lady said later on, I'd love to hear that guy from West Virginia talk. He reminds me of Deputy Dog. And I still don't know who in the hell Deputy Dog is, but that made me feel good. I understand he's some sort of a cartoon character or something. But I knew she loved me, And she came up to me afterwards, and she said, Ernest, what you said last night. She said, you look like the kind of a fellow that could take a little joke, and I hope you aren't offended. And I said, I certainly am not. And she said, I need those laughs. She said, my sponsor gave me the prayer, God, thank you for letting me laugh, but Lord, never let me forget. I cried. And when I heard you say that last night, Ernest, it took me right back to that. Since that time, I've never been away from AA that long. I do not believe that I can OD. I don't know about you all, but I don't think I can OD on AA. I cannot set my own priorities. I got awful sick in my life by dictating the terms of my own happiness and the terms of my own recovery. I cannot do that. I still go. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I still do. And sometimes more. And I'm not missing anything. That was one of my troubles. I had to stay up late at night. My heroes were Jack Barrymore and Errol Flynn. Now, he was a real winner, And I loved Dylan Thomas. And I loved all these guys that, burned that light brightly, and all that sort of stuff. And I had to stay up and play music late at night and always be the last one to go to bed and all that because I didn't want to miss anything. And for the last I don't know, from the time I took one drink, liquor diminished my life. It did not enhance my life. And I couldn't see it, so I know what you're talking about when you said cunning and baffling and powerful, and I know what the denial is because I had it. And they say the worst thing can happen to us, I've heard people say, is they'll lock us up or bury us or we'll be institutionalized. I'll tell you, friends, my life was getting to the world outside may have looked like it was doing pretty good, but inside I was dying spiritually. And for me, I think to walk around the rest of my life the way I was going, as lonely as I was, and the emptiness I had inside me, I don't care how well I did in a worldly sense. That was an awful sentence for me. I would not want to have gone through the rest of my life like that. That was unbearable for me. And I didn't know it. I really thought that everybody spent Sunday on the couch drinking beer and watching television, and Lord knows I needed it. The pressures that I had in my life, and the difficulties, and getting up to I was 47 years old, and I thought everybody was tired all the time and lonely, and I thought I'd had my fun, I really did. That is denial. And I'm so glad that I got knocked so flat on the seat of my pants that it began to cause me to have to surrender, to find a new life. I'm telling you, when I got to AA, I said, all right, I'll go to some meetings, but they'll destroy me professionally if they find out about it. I'll slip into a few meetings just enough not to drink. But that's going to be it, because I don't want people to know about this. And so I figured I'd come in and I'd hold under the table with all these old gentlemen who sat there with rusty zippers and tennis shoes and said, oh, God, I can't take a drink. That's what I thought life was going to be, and I'm serious. I'm just as serious as could be. It amazed me, utterly amazed me. I was so afraid. There's a place called the Charleston House, which is 1 block from my office. I'm a lawyer, and I'm also, I could probably be arrested for impersonating a musician, but I do a little entertaining. And I've been in the Charleston House many times. One time, all those things that we try to do to stop drinking, one time I decided I was only going to drink when it was free. I'm telling you, I drank more whiskey, I damn near died. You take a banjo and go over and run up and down the halls in the Charleston House when the convention's going on, you can get more free whiskey. That almost killed me. But anyway, I've been there many, many times, drunk, and been there entertaining, been there doing all kinds of crazy things. But I'd been back in the program about 2 or 3 months, and Jim H. and these fellows were having the state convention. And somebody said to me, it wouldn't hurt you to go to that, George. I did not want to go over there with 200 or 300 sober people. Might ruin my reputation. And I literally snuck in. I mean, that's funny today, but that's the way I felt. And I literally snuck in with my head down in my shoulders like in the coach, you know. And they had a guy named Jim W. from Texas, and he was their first speaker, if I recall correctly. And this guy got to talking, and everybody got to laughing, and I looked around me, and these people were having a ball. And here's a guy that's going to be miserable the rest of his life and have no more fun. And do you know, something just relaxed in me that night. I'll never forget it. And I thought, my gosh, if they're having this much fun, maybe I ought to just relax and kind of go with the flow of the thing. That Jim W. had a marked influence on my life. He said that you do something over here and something happens over here, you don't know the difference, but you don't think about it. That your thinker will kill you. And he said, you just do these things over here that they tell you to do, and something over here happens. And he said, then you find out that you don't know what that is, and when you don't know, you know. So all you got to do is just be around there till you figure out you don't know what's going on, and then you know, and just keep on doing it. You know? And everybody knew what he was talking about. I thought, my God, they're crazy. And do you know, today I know what he was talking about, and I don't understand a bit of it. But it's keeping me sober. I don't know what I did. That's why I won't bring up a topic hardly at all at a meeting. Bob knows that, and John knows that, because you know what? It amazes me. I go to a meeting and somebody always brings something up that I needed to know that day or needed to work on, you know, or hear about, and I didn't know I needed to know it when I got there. And if I'd have brought up the topic, I'd have never found out about it. These people were having fun. And Ernest, I knew what you're talking about last night. When it became fun, I thought, good Lord, I have been missing this. And I always liked to be where the action was. And I didn't know it was with you all. I had no idea. See, I'm literally this, I very well could have been that guy you sold that thing to, because I was always putting on a big front. They say I was a little flamboyant. They say I was a little bit grandiose, you know. And I was. Because I was a country boy, and I had an awful lot to cover up for. I was from Elkview, 10 miles from Charleston, and I always thought those guys down in Charleston were looking down their nose at me. So I overcompensated. I was going to wear a suit, and I was going to be a big shot, you know, and I'd do this and that and the other. Have a few drinks. I'll never forget. I was nervous, went up to West Virginia University. 5,000 students. I'm from a little old country town called Elkview. They had a party every night. Almost flunked out of school. I went to the party every night. It took me a whole semester to find out. Most of them just went about every 10 days. It was a different crowd. I went every night. You know? If you put a couple drinks in me, I'm just as good as anybody, I felt like. And I'll never forget going up to Pittsburgh. We tied Pitt today. You know, Pitt, that's always been a big weekend, you know. How in the world, you know, I could have ever thought I'm better off down here than up there. I don't know, but I feel that way tonight. But I went up to Pittsburgh, and they had the alumni party. I always felt they didn't want to talk to us undergraduates. One night, I distinctly remember this. Things happened to us after we're sober. We look back on, you know, and we learn things in retrospect, they say, and I believe that. I can remember having about 5 or 6 drinks, and I was over telling the athletic director, Red Brown, who we ought to be playing and what was wrong with the way he was scheduling the programs. You know, and here's a guy who thought he wasn't wanted there, and 2 or 3 drinks, and well, good Lord, I'm in there planning for him. And thought I ought to be, you know. And I'd watch to see if he took my advice later on, things like that. So I was overcompensated. And like it says in the big book, I drank because I liked the effect it had on me. Bob here often says it was a comforter, and God, that means the world to me. That's what it was. When I hurt, it was a comforter. And I had to get something else to comfort me. And I didn't know I needed you all, had no idea. I'd do things like drink when I was in high school. See, I found out. I heard one of those get low tapes, and he said most of us come in and we say, well, we crossed that magic line and became alcoholics all 6 months ago or a year ago. And then after we're here a while, maybe it was 5 years ago. Things occur to us. God unfolds all this as I can handle it, see. And then he says most of us figure out, yeah, it was probably about that first drink we took. And that's the way it was with me. I would drink in high school, got the first time, I drank till I got drunk, passed out, you know, threw up, came home, had to slip in the house, was out getting a Christmas tree. You know, woke up the next morning, just hung over as the devil, thrown up on the bed, had to make excuses. And then I spent the next, from the time I was 14 till I was 33, trying to drink just enough to have a good time and not get caught or do something wrong. And that seemed perfectly normal to me. I thought everybody, and I got all this wonderful advice. A cousin of mine said, all you got to worry about, George, don't be the drunkest man at the party. They always talk about the drunkest guy there, so you're perfectly okay as long as you're not the drunkest guy at the party. I latched right onto that, my mind, because I could drink that way, Good advice, It makes sense to me today. That's why I know I'm an alcoholic, All this makes sense to me. And it doesn't make any sense. That's why I know I need to be here. Well, anyway, that's the way I did in school. And I can remember now thinking, and I remember where it happened. I remember the hill it happened on up in Morgantown. I was supposed to study, and I went out and had a couple of beers. Literally had 2 beers. And on the way back into Morgantown, now I'm probably 18 years old, it dawned on me, after I have a couple of beers, I may as well forget studying. I may as well start again tomorrow. Never thought that was unusual, but I can look back now and I can see I was alcoholically drinking right then. Never forget, I went over to Atlantic City, kids in Elkview, here in Atlantic City, got all drunk and all hungover, and this man said, George, let me tell you what you do. You get up and take about 2 fingers of bourbon and lie down for a few minutes. You'll be okay. I did it. And of course, I laid down a few minutes. I felt good. Guess what? Boy, I have found something. This is a valuable tool. Went right out and just started drinking 2 fists of drink and drank all day. Had to do the same thing next morning. Alcoholic as could be, but I didn't see it that way. The man who gave me the advice could drink 2 drinks and stay sober all day and have half a dozen drinks that night. Didn't bother him any, but not me. Not me. So there I was, and I continued to drink that way. It was just always a question of when I could hold up, shy of getting into trouble. Mothers, wives, jobs, those things interfere with my drinking. I thought, that's all. But I always had to be worried, and I was always anxious. I was sitting at a meeting at the Edgewood Group in Charleston, West Virginia, and I had been in the program several years. And a fellow was talking about those 20 questions, and he said, did you drink every day was one of them? And I got thinking, no, I didn't drink every day, because, those things I mentioned kept me from it. But it dawned on me that I wanted to drink every day. From the time I was 14 and took the first drink of whiskey, I wanted to drink every chance. It was always looking forward to the next occasion, the next weekend, the next football game, the next party, any excuse in the world I could take a drink. And I'm sitting there at that meeting that night, and I thought, my God, somewhere it went away. Somewhere that obsession to always be looking forward to a drink. I didn't drink every day, but I wanted to. And somewhere that went away. And God, I felt like a load had been lifted off me. And you see, it happened, and I didn't even know when it happened. John M. there, God bless him. I want to thank John for that beautiful story he told last night. If you all just knew the acts of kindness that man has done and hadn't gotten caught at, I know you can see that from the story he told last night. And what a thrill it is to go to the meetings I go to with that man. And that story today I heard Don tell. I cried this morning. And you know what? I'm so proud I can cry now. I'm so grateful I can cry now a little bit. I'm getting to the point I can almost do it and not care if you see me, It's beautiful to be me, just to be me. And you all give me that permission. And I thank Jim H., the lives he's touched in Charleston, West Virginia. And I thank the committee for having me here and give me the chance to get a shot at one more day of sobriety. And that's what it is, passing on, telling my story, and it gives me a shot at one more day of sobriety. And I forget what I was talking about when I got sidetracked there. It was something about... Anybody remember? Anyway, retrospect, I was going to tell about John M. bringing a guy all the way from California, and he made a lead down to Serenity Club one night. And any of you all come to Charleston, come to the Serenity Club. We're open all the time. It's in Dunbar. And this guy named Bud L. And Bud L. said that he could never understand a spiritual experience while it was happening to him. And I thought, my gosh, isn't that powerful? That I can't see growth while it's happening to me. You see? So it's happening to me right now. If I'll just do these things Jim W. talked about, those steps that Don taught. I never heard a better straight out statement about working the steps, and that's where it is. As I heard that lady say today, it was beautiful. And Jim Williams said, if you just do these things that they say, and don't think about it, do them. It's a doing program. It's an action program. Then things will happen to you. And you look back in retrospect, and you find out you've been through a marvelous spiritual experience. You see, I kept on drinking, and in 1964, 5, or 6, I don't remember when, but it's good for me not to remember when. I was making speeches and not being able to remember what I had said at the speeches, and I'd go around and say, how did I do? And of course, I'd always pick somebody who was as drunk as I was, and they'd say, you did fine. That's a hell of a way to live, I'll tell you. And so I came to AA, and I stayed 11 months. And in those 11 months, I picked up on every bit of negativity that I could find. Somebody said, don't get into the steps too fast. You cram them in there too fast, and that'll, it's bad. Take them easy, just slow. And so I didn't work on the steps at all. Somebody says, don't talk about God because that'll run the newcomers off, though. Let me tell you how thick I am. I later went to a place called Valley Clinic, damn near dead. I was pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, it says in the big book, and that doesn't, as powerful as that language is, I was up there beyond that someplace. That's how I felt. I was empty inside. I was a shadow inside. I don't know. And I went to my first meeting. I said a prayer down there, a desperate prayer. And they say, God always answers the prayer of a desperate man. And I said, God help me. I guess I'm licked. I didn't expect it because I didn't think I deserved it. A couple nights later, I went to a meeting. Green pajamas. I puked all over them. Walked into that meeting, humiliated, embarrassed. Guess what they're talking about? The 11th step. And I thought, good Lord, here they are talking about God right out in the open. This meeting is going to run all the newcomers off. Great thinker, huh? Great thinker. Great thinker. See, I picked up on every bit of negativity back there in when it was in the middle 60s. I don't really remember, and it's good for me not to remember. That's how sick I was. So after 11 months, I didn't do anything he told me. I read that big book, I think, from cover to cover, and do you know I didn't see one thing spiritual in it? I was a sick man and didn't know it. Now I can't read a word in the book without not only seeing a spiritual message for me, but looking at the same thing I read a year ago and seeing a new spiritual message, Ralph. And that's what's amazing to me. That's why it's so exciting. This is where the action is. I mean to tell you, it's a marvelous thing to look at something you've looked at a dozen times, underlined, made your notations, and somebody puts it in just a little different way at the meeting. And I'm so glad I went to that meeting that day. So I don't think I can go to too many. I think my thinker is the worst enemy I got. I really believe that. Somebody told me that. Well, anyway, I drank enough. I'm not going to bore you with the details. I drank enough to get into a place called Valley Clinic, and I wanted to die. For the last 2 or 3 days, I drank. Every time I woke up, I drank for oblivion. And that's I think, was my attempt at suicide or whatever. I don't know. But I was so empty and so hollow, and they poured me in the place. I thought it was dark. I thought I went in at night. It was 2 or 3 years ago. 2 or 3 years before I found out that it was broad daylight. And there I was. But something started happening. I said that prayer, and looking back on it in retrospect, that's the only thing I did different. And I'll never forget Bill R. They say a lot of them say, Bill lays his spiritual program too strong on people. He keeps telling them, take the third step, and he keeps telling them it's all spiritual. But I'll tell you about Bill R., and I'll never forget him. He looks like one of the apostles to me. He has a beard, and he's got a face that looks like it's been lived in. The kind of face I like, brother, it's a face of experience. It's a face of love. And I'm standing there in that doorway, having puked on my green pajamas, not looking like I'd be very welcome in any of those parties that I like to go to where the action was. And I'm trying to decide whether to go into the AA meeting or go back to my bed, which is just down the hall. And Bill R. came over to me with that beautiful face, looking like one of the apostles. And he said, God bless you, brother, you're in the right place. And I followed him right in. And whenever I hear that part read about wherever anybody's hurting, we want that hand to be out there, I think of the hand of Bill Rice. I'm going to violate his anonymity. He won't mind. And if it's a violated rule, I'm sorry. But God bless him, I love him. And I've learned to love men, and I've learned to love women in this program. And I went in there to that meeting at the end of the week. It was a dried out joint. I didn't know about treatment. I'd have probably gone if I knew anything about it, but I didn't. Anyway, I went back to work at my office, and I started going to meetings. It wasn't really any act of volition on my part, but I gradually started hearing things. And I gradually started liking them. I went to that state convention. I got to laughing. I found out humor. And then I had this little problem about God. I taught Sunday school, I'd searched, I'd read, I'd done all kinds of things. I diligently, I believed, and was trying to get a hole through God. I knew how you did it. I knew intellectually how it was supposed to be done. But I'd never had it put to me in a way that fit with me. And there was a lady named Joanne F., if any of y'all know her, from Baltimore. I've never seen her before or since. But she'd had a tough time. Told a beautiful story of anguish and suffering, the kind of suffering that we recover because of. And then she said that they told her if she would do these things that they said to do, that she would find a God that would not put more on her than she could bear, would give her everything she needed. And when she did that, after a time, looking back on it in retrospect, she would find out that that's what she had always wanted anyway: peace, love, joy, and contentment. And for the first time, now that was that same weekend in that state convention, so I'm glad I went. I'm glad I went. I'm so glad I went. I'm glad I was guided to go. I'm glad guys like Jim H., people like that, said to me, go. Jim had as much to do with that convention as he had with this one. I'll never forget him, because he was right, as he always was in our valley, right in the forefront of carrying the message. And I'm here because of guys like that, and women. God bless the women. I found out, see, I don't want to tell anybody anything about me. You know, fourth, fifth step, I wouldn't tell anybody even knows, much less in a meeting. And the women got to talking, and they talked from the heart, and I didn't know how to do that. But I found out they liked them. They tell all these terrible things they done. Everybody say, oh, isn't that beautiful? And they love them. And I found out you all love me more for my shortcomings than you do for all that stuff I was trying to show you what a big shot I was. The first step, surrendering and all that, I went out to a conference that I did not know. It was a conference on how to lead a surrendered life, and I had no idea I was going to basically a 12-step conference. But I did it. I was guided to do it. So I'm out in Bozeman, Montana, and the first day they said, tell us a little bit about why you're here. And I said, well, they got around to me, about 50 people in the room. I said, I'm a trial lawyer, and many years ago I learned that with every physical injury there's a concomitant emotional overlay. And I got into Dr. Hans Selye's theory of stress, and I learned that stress will kill you. And if I didn't present that for a client who'd been injured, I wasn't doing the job for him. And then I went on to talk about 3 or 4 other experts I'd read. And this lady came up to me. She was the wife of the man who was putting on the thing. And I found out later she just 2 years before had been in a treatment. And I found out that her thinker was a problem too, and she had just barely escaped with her life, just like I had, and she could see what my problem was, and she put her arms around me with big tears in her eyes, and you ladies will have to forgive me, but I'm going to tell you just what she said, and it shocked me. She said, you poor done son of a bitch. She says, can't you see that thinker is going to kill you? Well, my mind went right to work. It said, she took my inventory. I'd heard that. And at noon, I put my hat down on my head and I stormed back to the motel, and I said, now, she doesn't know how hard I've been working trying to get this AA program. She doesn't know those good things I've done and haven't gotten caught at either, and I'm really a pretty decent guy. She has no idea. And am I supposed to turn this mind off? God gave me this mind. And you know, I ranted and raved and argued with myself there for a while, which I was awful good at. I can't turn it off. It still doesn't. I have to tell on it. I tell on it at meetings, and then sometimes it quits for a day or two. But it became funny. Ernest, it became funny. I thought, God, I am sick. It didn't take her 5 minutes, and I was just warming up to tell her what a powerful guy I was. I went back and thanked her, and I thanked her every time I've seen her since for having the courage to run the risk of running me off, because I damn near left. I damn near quit it all right there. But she had the courage, and she had the courage because what she was relating to me was experience. You know, that was her experience. And she almost died. She had to quit that. She had to start doing what Jim W. said, to do these steps and do these things over here and say her prayers and turn her life and her will over to the care of God with understanding and take that inventory and do those things, and something would happen over here we don't understand. And then when we don't understand that, it's all okay. But you see, I had to be hit right between the head with a 2-by-4. That's just the way I am. And my problem is somebody gave me a book and I read it. See, I'd read all these self-help books, and I got to tell you about my sponsor. My sponsor is the guy that John referred to last night, Cecil M.C., the guy that he talked about, the tough old guy, the acerbic guy. That he got sober because he just didn't want that guy to say, I told you wouldn't make it, see. Beautiful man. You can tell the way we talk about him, we love him. He's a good sponsor. Well, I would go to my sponsor and I'd start telling him my soap opera. He'd say, well, have you done a gratitude list? And I'd say, well, no, but now let me tell you what the problem is. And I'd tell him my soap opera. He'd say, but have you written a gratitude list? And that man would not listen to my soap opera. You know, he heard all the soap operas, and the man was smart enough, again, to give me what I needed, tough love, you know. And then finally, one day I started doing it. And I want to tell you, the second step I didn't think I needed. I thought, well, the first step, okay, I'm a drunk, I'm an alcoholic, I'm unmanageable. I realized that. A smart guy like me wouldn't have been in those green pajamas having just puked on it profusely, you know. And I won't bore you with it, but God has revealed a number of other things which indicate that, you know, I'm a little bit half a bubble off or more. Still I am. That's what's nice about it. Great freedom in finally figuring out you ain't ever going to amount to anything, you know. Then I can be what I'm supposed to be. I think every young man in America's mother thought he ought to be president of the United States. And God, my mother worked hard on that, so did I. You know? But I can just be me, and what a marvelous, wonderful thing it is, just to be me. And but that second step, I just didn't think I was crazy. I did not think return to sanity. You know, I just did not think. And then one day at a meeting, you know, I learned everything I tell you tonight, just like John said, I've heard here. I couldn't have got it anywhere else. I was messing up my life right and left before. And at least I don't know how it's going now, but I'm happy with it. I'm happy being me, and I never was, and that's an improvement. Well, it dawned on me that the way I was looking at God was that I sincerely thought that until I got myself totally virtuous, that I could not go and ask God for help without being a hypocrite. See, I knew I was going to do some things again. So how could I go to God and say, help me, knowing I was going to do it again? So consequently, I couldn't think and that convinced me. You know, when I just saw it just like a flash one night in the meeting, that's crazy. When you ought to go to God is when you're really in bad trouble, and that's when you went down to Valley Clinic. And somebody pointed out in the book one night there, they said if God can remove that sensation to drink alcohol, think what else he can do for you. And I kind of got started in the steps. And before that happened, though, let me tell you about this God thing. There's a guy named James C. Some of y'all may know him. And James C. would say the same thing every night. Now, by this time, I'm enjoying meetings, but I wasn't enjoying James C. too much. I have found out the things I don't enjoy are the things that probably ought to be. That's telling me something. That's my insanity. He says, I get up every morning and I say, good morning, God, this is James C. Thank you for, please help me not take a drink. And he would go on and on and on. The next meeting he'd say the same thing. The next meeting he'd say the same thing. And I thought, oh. And one day I said to myself, this mind here said, before I started telling on the meeting, see, I tell on it now. And I tell on it. And then it leaves me alone for a day or two. I was going to say, I was going to get up the next morning. Now, I wouldn't say anything to God in the mornings. But I was going to get up the next morning, I was going to say, good morning, God, this is George D. Has James C. called in yet? I am so glad I didn't do that. See, I can talk about it now. I can tell you how nuts I am now, but at that time, that's crazy. I've thanked James C. a million times because there again, he ran the risk of running me off by telling me, honest to God. Like old Vince out in Bozeman says, the highest truth I know is my experience. I can tell you my experience. That's what he was telling me, and he had the guts to keep on telling it, even though it might have run a guy off. And they say, if the idea of God runs you off, the bottle will run you back. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. I really do. And what we need is the truth, and James C. told me the truth. And one day, I got to looking at James C. Now, I've gone to school with James C., and I know him real well. And James C. was never very happy, and it didn't look to me like he was, and I wasn't very happy. I remember being down in Lexington to a ball game, and that night after the game, we all ended up in a bar, and there's a guy down there who looked drunker than me and James C., and his act was to take a big long whip and get a guy out of the audience to put a cigarette in his mouth, and he'd whip her back there about as far as John M's sitting, and he would whittle away on that cigarette. James C. volunteered to let that guy go to work on him. See? So I knew James C. was a little bit of a bubble off there, half a nose. I thought I'll never see James C. with a nose on again. See, this is when we were drinking. But that wasn't the kind of guy he was when I got back to the program. I was humiliated to see him there, After all, all those lawyers knowing I'm a drunk, Today I don't care. All I worry about is the traditions. All I worry about is the traditions. If somebody, and when they send the DUIs guys around to the meetings, and they ask you to sign that they were there to take back to the judge. I don't give a damn if that helps somebody. But I, scared to death. And I noticed that James C. was happy. He had found something. So one day I got up and I said, Good morning, God. This is George and Dorothy. Please thank you for removing the invitation to drink. Please help me not drink this day. And some other prayers, and I started praying in the morning. And today, because I heard some tapes, and I heard about a man who took the third step prayer every morning with somebody he loves. All this stuff that I hear, I later find in the big book, and I'm always so surprised. I'll be damned. Oh, that's what old so. It's amazing to me. You look in the book and you think, like that business about he won't put more on you than he can bear and all that. That's over in that story, freedom from bondage. But I couldn't read it out there. I had to hear it through the experience of Joanne F. You see, it's the only way I can get it. It's the only way I can grow here through you all, And that's what started happening. I started praying. And I found out a lot of things about me. I believe in the bottom of my heart, when I take the third step and the seventh step and the 11th step, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry it out, that I'm okay today. I didn't plan this. But the biggest problem I had about being invited down here was not sitting down and writing a damn speech. The old ego. I wanted to impress you all, and didn't want to embarrass Jim, or anything like that. We're old friends and all that. I thought, that's crazy. I didn't do it. John M. and I did what we do before we go on the stage. John M. and I have done a little stage work. And we go backstage and we say a prayer called the Holy Spirit Prayer. And I believe in the bottom of my heart I'm under guidance. Whatever I'm supposed to say tonight, I'll say. And there's a great peace in that. But I can't keep that peace permanently. I have to do that every day. And before I do almost anything, I have to say a little prayer. And I believe in meditation now. I think for me, that's something that I neglected a long time. And we don't hear it talked about much. But old Vince out in Bozeman, the guy at 80 years old, been sober. He died last summer, and he'd been sober since he was 45. Came right off Skid Row. And he was a beautiful man. And when I went out every summer, and I'd always go to a lot of meetings with Vince, and he was kind of my surrogate sponsor. I loved him. And he was beautiful. And Vince said, I would no more start my day without my meditation in the morning than I would go on a plumbing job without my tools. And that was just one of dozens and dozens and dozens of things that man said that became part of my life. So I'm learning to meditate. I meditated a lot today, and it made me feel calm and peaceful and comforted. Bob gave me that word, comforted. I'm comforted here with you all. There's something happening here tonight. It's been happening all weekend. It's going to continue to happen. And it'll happen in rooms that I go to, and I don't have to call anybody to be there. And I don't have to arrange the meeting. Nobody's in charge. And there's no money involved. And everything that we do organizationally, from the time we're little kids and taught that you have to do to make something work, we do that exactly backwards in AA. And this is the only place I've ever found peace. And I found out that all I wanted in my life, all my life, was just to be a little boy and to be loved. That's all I ever wanted. I wanted to love you all and to have you all love me. That's all I ever wanted. But you see, that was never enough. I never thought that was enough. I thought, that's too simple. There must be more. So I had to do something to impress you. And it wasn't you I was trying to impress, it was me, because I was afraid to know me. And somebody gave me an idea that, why am I afraid to tell you who I am? Because I'm afraid you won't like me, but more important, I'm afraid I won't like me. So I took the fourth step. The first time I took a fourth step, I took a sin list. I told all the sins to myself, and I said, now here's a beautiful example of how crazy my mind is. Really, literally. I said, now I'm an oral person. I'm a lawyer and an actor and all that. I'm an oral person, so I won't write it down like my sponsor said. I'll sit and meditate about my sins, and then I'll tell somebody right quick while I remember. And I'll ask guidance, and it'll all just flow out, and it'll be beautiful. Well, I'll tell you this, there's a lady named Betsy who is beautiful out in Bozeman also. Betsy heard me talking at meetings. She said, that fellow from West Virginia reminds me, God bless her, I love her. She said, he reminds me of the fellow who went to confession and telling about all these women, and the priest said, aren't you the same fellow who's been here 3 weeks in a row? And yeah, it's like the same story. He said, you don't have to confess that but one time. And he said, well, but I enjoy talking about it. God bless Betsy. See, she could see my insanity, and she helped me get well by giving me humor. I loved her. I saw immediately what she said. But I'm not going to follow the big book. I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to do it orally. And you know what? I think that's the best I could do at that time. At least I was working on the steps. I wasn't, one of my problems is to try to do everything perfectly. So at least I was working on them. And I told, you know what I did? I found a woman. And I told her all my sins. And you know what? She wasn't in the program. She had some counseling, so I thought this is a wonderful way. I'll never see her again. And she was so impressed, she told me all hers. God, it was exciting. But there was something going on inside me. I wasn't finding what I wanted in the program. There's something gnawing inside me. We know. We know. Somebody said the 11th commandment is, you do too know what I mean. Deep down inside me, I knew that I hadn't done it right. Then I had this sponsor. If I didn't know, I had a sponsor who kept saying, well, it says put it down on paper in black and white. My sponsor, that same guy John was talking about, if they said do a yellow pencil and a white piece of paper with blue lines on it, that's what he thought you ought to do. You see, he was just what I needed. Guess what? About a year later, I'm back out in Bozeman. I thought, well, I got a week out here. So I got, of all things, when all else fails, I got the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it does specify certain lists in there. And I wrote down those lists. And I became so intrigued at the fellow I was beginning to know for the first time, I could hardly do anything else. I went to the meetings and all that. But boy, every spare minute I was writing, and I found out I'm a hell of a nice guy. And I also found out that everything I've done, somebody else has done. I've also found out I've committed every sin in the book. If to think it's to do it, there's a few people that I've been, read the obituary, as they say, with a bit of relish about. And that doesn't make me feel too good about myself. But I'll tell you something. Please don't tell me that this is not original, because I think this may be the only original thought I've had since I've been in AA. And I'm sure it's not. But this is part of me again. One day I thought, to have these thoughts is human. To keep them is my illness. To have anger, lust, envy, greed, all those things, jealousy, is my humanity. I found out we all have them, apparently. And so that's my humanity, but to keep it's my illness. Now, that may be original. For God's sakes, if it isn't, don't tell me where it came from. Let me have one little last thing that I think I'm smart at. Now, I even say that with humor, because I'm sure I heard that somewhere in a meeting. But once I took that fourth step, I saw a whole new idea of this program. Do you realize that once I took that fourth step and told it to somebody, and he told me he was the same way, this time I took it with a man, incidentally. I don't know why. Wouldn't have made any difference. But I began to realize he loved me, even though I had told him in depth the worst of me. And he loved me for it. And that came as a shock to me. It came as a revelation and a shock to me. And do you know, it dawned on me then, after about another year or two, comes to me just like that. I was 47 years old when I got this program. And for the life of me, still can't see why everybody else doesn't get it just like that. Like my son, different people. God bless him, he's in the program now. But it finally, after doing that and going through that process and finding out that anything I do, somebody else identifies with, I started experimenting a little bit at telling things at meetings that my mind would think I would tell on it. And guess what? You love me more for that than anything else. It's when I tell you who I really am, and what a rotten SOB, particularly the pettiness. That's what I hate to tell you. Let me give you just one example. I could be arrested for impersonating a musician, believe me. I'm a kind of a reincarnated vaudevillian, really, I play a musical song. Now, I was asked to do what I called the Legend of Danny Boy with the Charleston Symphony Orchestra in front of Morris Harvey College, and they played the 1812 overture, lights and firecrackers and that beautiful Capitol over there, and the cannons going off and all that. As a prologue to that, I went out and did this plea for peace and played Danny Boy. They paid about $300 to get an arrangement to play behind me on the saw. The whole orchestra to play Danny Boy. The highlight of anybody's musical career is a saw player. I don't know any saw player that ever got to do anything like that. And guess what? The next year they didn't ask me to play with them. Why should they ask me to play with them? I had done my best shot. That's all I do, Danny boy, practically. Why should they? You know, I had mine, but I wanted more. Deep down, I'd like to play every year. You know, that's my ego. You know, and besides that, they hired some people that I didn't like to play the next year. And guess what I did? Now, mind you, these women, these lovely women of the symphony, had worked one solid year. They have their bake sales and their distance runs and all that in connection with the symphony. And this is their big money maker of the year. I prayed it would rain on the son of a bitch. And I felt so guilty about that. I am so ashamed. That is petty. That is really petty. And that bothered me until I told it at a meeting. Because that's not the kind of person I am. That is not the kind of person I am. I didn't want it to rain. You know what? It did rain, and that really bothered me. It rained on them. It rained them out. God bless those ladies that worked so hard and all that. And I felt so guilty about that until I came to a meeting and told them at a meeting. I told them right at home where they knew the characters, the cast of characters. And I found out when I'm carrying something like that on my heart, when I really even have a thought like that's doggone, that is that petty, I better tell somebody about it. And the minute I tell about it, and everybody laughs and they tell me things that they thought, I'm okay, then I'm not carrying. I'm not putting it down there. It's going to fester, and it's going to kill me if I don't tell somebody. And I'm not perfect at that. Talking from my feelings, but you women are helping me because you do it. You do it better than us men. Us men have got to be strong, keep a stiff upper lip and nose to the grindstone and all that. But the women can cry and they can do a lot of things. It seems to me a little easier than we can, and I'm so glad so many of you are here. The same guy out in Bozeman, I made a talk, and I sent it out to him. It was taped, and so I said, please tell me how I'm doing. He called me up and he said, George, you have been a trial lawyer, show business character, BSer for so long. He says, I don't think you understand how serious the problem is. This is going to kill you. Well, it hurts. Because I thought I was beginning to talk from the heart, and tell things. Really speak from feelings, and all that. And getting well. He called me 3 or 4 days later. He's kind of a sponsor to me, too. And he said, God, I was worried that you'd go out and get drunk after me telling you that. And I said, well, I asked you to do it. And I said, frankly, it did hurt. But thank you for having the courage to tell me, because, how are we going to know if somebody doesn't have the courage to tell us? And so I have tried, and I say my prayers that I can be me at these meetings, and that I can tell you that I'm not some big shot. And by the same token, I don't have to stand up here and tell you that I'm not something either. I am what I am, and I'm very happy with what I am. I am blessed to be able to do certain things, and you all are each blessed at being able to do certain things. We're all planted in God's garden. We're God's children with our own special talents. And when we're exercising those talents, each of us has a beautiful part in this big symphony which has been going on through 50 years in AA. And before I got in AA, I wasn't any part of the symphony. I was a discordant note out there in the world, getting more cynical as the years went by. And it was so sad. And I was so sad. But I'm happy today. I am comforted. I'm happy. I feel good. I took the 6th and 7th step in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. My whole life fell apart that afternoon. And since that time, I've been divorced. I've been remarried. Lady in the program, I'm very happy. I'm not unhappy with my former wife. I have come to the place in my life, like it says in the book, that I know that I must wish for her and pray for her what I wish for myself, and I do that. And I do that every day. And I do that with my present wife. For my former wife. And I know that I must do that for me. And I sincerely wish for her happiness. I want her to have happiness. And I'm sorry for anything that I've done in any way in that connection. I've lost 2 parents, and it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. I believe in the depth of my heart that they're simply going to God. I think that's a step on the journey, and I feel at peace with it. I found out when I took an inventory of me that I had certain hatreds of my mother and my father. And I found out, the minute I found out that I hated them and could admit that in an AA group, that I loved them all the more. and I can honestly say there were things about them that I did not like. Then I saw in perspective, overwhelmingly, they had been the love of my life and had done everything for me all my life that they could do. And I'm so glad that I got beyond that, because before they died, I was able to be at peace with both of them. I found out that I had an intense resentment against my father, and I never knew these things. See, this all comes up in the fourth and fifth step. I never knew that I hated my father because he wouldn't stand up to my mother. I was raised in the Catholic Church. We were the only one of two Catholic families up Elkview. I was snuck off to Charleston and brought back before 9 o'clock. Looked at me like a kid, so nobody knew we'd been to church. And I resented that. Why didn't he stand up to her? And if he felt it was right, and once I realized that resentment, I was able to make my peace with my father. Before he died, I didn't tell him that. But I was able to go to him in love and be loving to him. Because you see, that was a misconception I had as a child. It was that man who taught me to pray the prayers that I have learned to pray since I got back to AA. And I think in AA we go back to where we came from ordinarily. And I think that anybody who has, and most of us have had, some resentments about our church because they didn't do for us what we thought they should have. But once we admit we have those, we can go back to where we came from in love and really learn in those places and grow in those places and concede that maybe they aren't doing it like we think they ought to be doing it, but overwhelmingly they were coming out of love to us. I'll never forget this, I went to a meeting over in Alexandria, and I was going up to Baltimore the back way, and I ended up, that meeting had been so beautiful, and I had such peace and calmness. And I thought, well, they say, a sponsor of mine kept saying that at night you should thank God for the day, even if it was a lousy day. And that seemed to me to be the dumbest idea I ever heard. But by this time I was beginning to understand that my mind would tell me falsehoods, and I better start doing, I'd learned a few lessons. So it only took me about another year to start saying thank you at night. God, I'm done. That night, in that motel in Baltimore, I said, thank you, God, for this day. And immediately, that day went into perspective. And I could see that one or two little things had happened that had irritated the dickens out of me and tended to be cloud the whole day. But when I would say at night, thank you, God, for this day, and go through a 10-step inventory and be prepared to make amends if I was wrong on something, that somehow or other it all got into perspective, and I realized that God had been very kind to me that day. And I went to sleep, and it was a very peaceful sleep. And I have found out that when I have these 12 steps don't work just to not drink, that no matter what I have, if it's anger, resentment, and it's always fear. Once I worked it, like I said in the book, you know what? It always came out fear. Just like it says in the book, bracket, fear. So when I start getting angry and upset, if I can just start on step 1, 2, 3, say a prayer, start inventory, see what my fear is, then I start feeling good about myself. Because there's something I'll see then what I need to do. Usually it's going and sharing it at a meeting and starting the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th process and meditating and all that. So you see, I found out that I can work any problem through the 12 steps. Any problem in my life. Because if I get uncomfortable, I'm going to have to drink. I'm going to have to get finally to that point where I say, well, if it's going to be this bad, may as well get drunk. But if I take that problem, that specific problem, for only one day through that 12-step process, see, I can be a non-angry man for one day. I don't have to argue with nobody about nothing, but I forget that. I argue. I fight. I'm on a radio show, and I'm supposed to be a co-host. Now, I'm going through the death of parents, the divorce, and all that relatively unperturbed. This radio show's almost driven me crazy. But they don't do it my way. And it's terrible. I'm blessed to be on there. I started out, and they keep whittling my time down. I now got 6 minutes out of 2 hours. And a guy like me ought to have at least 12 or 15. And they're giving those others more time, and I'm getting less time. And I'm sitting there like a baby, full of self-pity. I love that. I got so much out of hers last night on that pity pot at the point I got ring around the butt. I think, well, that's what I love that, because that's what I did. And I finally realized that it was fear that I wouldn't be appreciated. Started working the 12 steps on it. And right now, I'm not totally cured. But I talked about my mother-in-law for 2 or 3 years. I don't even have to worry about her anymore. Talked about all kinds of problems. And I don't even have to worry about them anymore. They don't bother me. And that radio show ain't bothering me much. And it's going to go away because I'm working the steps on it. I'm working the steps on it. What a revelation. I don't know what else to say. I guess I'm done, and except to say that I am happy. I feel joyous and free. Every one of those promises is coming true in my life. And when I have bad days, I know where to go to get well again. I want to leave you with one thought that occurred to me. I think God's got a perfect system of justice. I think he'll let me suffer as long as I want to be separate from him. And separate from him means being separate from you. He speaks to me through you all. I love, Ernest, what Dr. Paul O. said up at the Founders Day. I heard his tape. I wasn't there. He said, this is just his idea about how God works. He said, don't even want to put it off on anybody else. He said he thought when he got up there to heaven, God was going to say, did you enjoy it? And if you said, well, I enjoyed it, but I'd like to have a bigger house. Well, I know, but didn't you enjoy the peace and joy and tranquility and all that stuff I gave you? Yeah, but I would have liked to have a better job. I know, but what about the sunsets and the beautiful trees here in the Shenandoah Valley? And he said, I know, but it would have been nice if my wife had been a little better looking, He says, his idea was that if you kept on like that long enough, God might just finally say, well, maybe you ought to just go to hell. I love that. I love that. I really love that. But I believe he does have a perfect sense of justice. And I'll be peaceful as long as I stick close to him and close to you. Separation, atonement, at-one-ment from my dis-ease with life. I think that's the way it works. And I think it's just like, to me, it's just like if I cut my finger, I get pain because there's a nerve there and I get pain, so I know to put iodine on it. If I get angry, resentful, jealous, any of those character defects start flaring up, same thing. I come to you and I tell you about it. It's just like putting iodine on the physical problem. Emotionally, I begin to get at one again. And that's a nice way to live. And I want to leave you all with the words I left the fellows with the other day when I was playing my little musical show at the Veterans Hospital. As I was leaving, I said, gee, I hope you fellows get better. And they said, the same to you. Thank you very much.
I don't think it was you. I think it was your father, but it looks like the same suit. Maybe this will make up for the locomotive. After something that wonderful, if I were to say anything, it would be like giving you a sour pickle after a good ice cream sundae. Let's all stand and close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep our seats, please.